Hello and welcome to the International Gaming Standard Association's Conversations. The GSA Conversations are simply that, conversations between various gaming industry professionals discussing a specific topic. They're intended to be informative and to generate questions. I am Peter de Raad, IGSA's president, and today we have with us Mark Pace, Managing Director of GSA Europe. Today's conversation topic is a short introduction of one of GSA's most important standards, the Game-to-System or the G2S standard. GSA will also be hosting a 1-hour Zoom session with Q&A on how GSA's Game-to-System standard benefits the industry. But for now, let's talk about how do I implement G2S? Mark, during the past conversations, we've talked about the benefits of G2S from an operator and a regulatory perspective, but for G2S to be available to those two groups, suppliers have to first implement it in their products. So today I thought we'll talk about G2S from a supplier or slot manufacturer's perspective.
Sure, where do you want to start?
Well, I thought we'd start with addressing the white elephants on the table. G2S is a big protocol. The specification document is elephant-sized.
Yeah, it's a big spec. I think last time I looked, it was over 1,600 pages long, but there's a reason for that.
Tell me.
Well, okay, so first I think you have to realize that the specification document itself was written for developers. There are hundreds of pages of code examples within it, and they're there to help to make sure that developers can see how the G2S messages are actually formed.
Okay, but even if you take out the hundreds of pages of examples, the spec is still quite large.
It is, okay, but then you have to keep in mind that G2S supports a ton of functionality. So the spec details all that functionality in sections, which using G2S speak is called classes.
So a G2S class is a grouping of messages, I would say, that would be used for a particular piece of functionality it supports.
Right. And there are over 20 classes. Now, that doesn't mean you have to implement them all. In fact, to make it even simpler, G2S tells you exactly which classes you must implement. Those are the ones called the core classes, and there are 6 of them.
Well, that also means that all the other classes are optional.
Exactly, they are. The core classes are the ones that provide the most commonly used functionality between systems and slot machines.
Well, why don't we quickly go through that, Mark?
Okay. So without going into too much detail, the core classes. We have communications. That's how the slot machine and the systems talk to each other. There's cabinet, information about the slot machine's housing, the security, and how systems can control it. There's event handler. Those are the events that are supported by the slot machine, how to install them, remove them, find out how to subscribe to those events, and to manage the collection and delivering of those events and the data associated with them. Well, there's meters, of course, meters that are supported by the slot machine and can be subscribed to by a system. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, that's 4. Gameplay, the commands and events that are related to the games on the slot machine, and one more. Oh, and hand pay. The commands and events related to hand pay jackpots and how they are handled.
Mark, you kept on saying system. That's because a slot machine running G2S can be connected to multiple systems?
That's right. Now, keep in mind that those 6 classes are the basics, right? So G2S, can't even talk, supports a ton more functionality. But those are implemented on a sort of market by market or customer by customer perspective. So no one is expected to implement the full G2S spec unless they have a real business need to do so.
Okay, so let's say you're a supplier and you want to implement G2S. The first thing you have to do is to join GSA so that you can get a legitimate copy of G2S. But is having the spec document enough? I would think not, right? So what then?
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a bit, because I think it's important for suppliers to understand the resources that are available to them. It's not like, we throw a 1,600-page spec at them and say, here you go, good luck, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would be pretty tough, pretty hard for a developer to just get going from the spec document, no?
I don't think you'd want to do that, just hand them the spec and walk away. So what we do And this is where I sort of disagree when I hear people say that G2S is too difficult to implement. I mean, the reality is that people that have implemented both SAS and G2S will actually tell you that G2S is far simpler to do. In fact, what they say is that once you get past that communication piece, the communication class, and specifically the transport to be exact,
Yeah.
then the rest is actually pretty straightforward.
And but IGSA also makes training and software available to help the developers to get over that bump.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So training and tools, I think that's quite good to talk about both.
Let's do that, because I think most people don't realize that it was GSA that developed the SAS 602 toolkit in the old days, right, to help developers implement the protocol. We have a history, right? I mean, we have a history of helping developers implement solutions. So go ahead, Mark.
Without a doubt. So let's talk about training. There are really, I guess, two ways to get G2S development training. The first is an in-person training course that is conducted by our technical director, Ethan Tower. So Ethan typically will go to the Supplier's location and do a 5-day-long training course directly with the developers. Now, to be honest, in most cases, the developers kind of throw him out after the first 3 days because they've learned enough and they just want to get started with coding. However, it's good for him to stick around for the last 2 days for any hands-on help if they need it.
Yeah, it's good to realize GSA charges a daily fee and asks the suppliers to cover Ethan's travel-related costs.
That's right. Now, the second option is an online self-paced training course available through iGaming Academy. Now, this is essentially the first 3 days of Ethan's in-person course. It's the same material that he uses, and actually Ethan narrates the slides. This is a pretty low-cost way of getting your feet wet with G2S, and it may actually be more than enough for the developers.
Yeah, we have a link to this training actually on our website, igsa.org.
Yeah. Now, in addition to this, we just announced what I think is a really new and exciting updated tool offering that is going to be very beneficial to suppliers of slot machines and systems.
You're talking about the certification and validation tool, or CVT, right? It's developed by GSA, by Radical Blue for GSA.
I am, but I think the name might confuse people, and it doesn't really kind of tell the whole story, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Mark, explain.
Well, okay, so the tool is awesome because it allows developers to validate that their G2S message implementation is actually up to spec. You connect the tool running on a computer to, let's say, your slot machine, and then you can see whether the message the slot machine sends and its handling of the resulting response actually passes or fails. Now, as part of the relaunch of this year, we're including a G2S reference implementation so the developers can actually see the code.
I mean, including that reference implementation alone is huge. I mean, I think of having that on top of the training should greatly help developers get up to speed quickly.
Yeah, and since I've watched a lot of those telemarketers on TV, I'm going to sound like one now. And here's more good news. We've also created 2 packages, actually. One's a CVT Basic, and the other one is a CVT Suite. Now, the Basic comes with the toolkit and reference implementation. The Suite, in addition to those 2 things, also includes Radical Blue's protocol analyzer and the G2S scope. But the best news of all, I think, is that we've slashed the price to make these tools affordable for all suppliers, regardless of size. I mean, the Basic now is 15 times cheaper than before, and the Suite is more than 7 times cheaper and has actually more stuff.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. I mean, we're all very excited. It's very exciting news, and GSA is very appreciative of Radical Blue's efforts to not only reduce the price, but also add these added capabilities.
Yeah, and remember when I said that there are, more than 20 G2S classes? The CVT now has more capabilities. It covers not just the 6 core classes, but an additional 8 classes. So that's like 3/4 of all the G2S classes.
Well, but that's more than's required for potentially a lot of the markets where G2S is being used.
Exactly right.
All right, Mark, to summarize this conversation, a supplier wanting to implement G2S must first join GSA to get a copy of the specification. GSA makes training both in person and online available for developers to get them up to speed quickly. GSA has relaunched and updated a CVT tool by providing two packages, the CVT Basic and the CVT Suite. Both come with the G2S reference implementation, and the suites add additional red-blue tools. Finally, most importantly, the price of these packages has been significantly reduced, making them affordable for all suppliers.
I think you've covered it all.
Thanks, Mark. Again, a great conversation. And to our audience, thank you for listening. Please send us your questions and comments by contacting us. Information on doing so can be found on our website, igsa.org. Until the next conversation, thank you.